Hello, everybody. Welcome to this part of Webinar Week, where we're going to be answering some of your questions and talking a little bit about what it's like to study in Utrecht, what it's like being a master's student in Utrecht. A little bit about this presentation, how it's going to work. Hopefully, you'll have all been chatting away already with some of our glamorous assistants who are in the other room, who will introduce you shortly. But also to let you know that this is also being recorded, and you'll get a link sent to you soon after where you can watch it back. Um, so we hope it's informative for you. We hope we answer some of your questions. And if you have any questions that you want to ask, please just send them in the chat, and we will hopefully get to them by the end of the presentation. The people you are talking to on the chat in the other room next to us are Christiana, Emma, and Dahariana. And my name is Tom. I'm from the UK. I am here in Utrecht studying a master's in climate physics, and I've been here for 1.5 years. I've only got a few months left, and I'm writing my thesis. And my co-host here is Valentina.
Hi everyone, my name is Valentina. I am from Bolivia. I'm doing a master's here in business development and entrepreneurship. And also I only have a few months left here in the Netherlands. I'm doing my thesis right now and very excited to share my experience with you.
So what we're going to talk about is, well, first of all, how to get started with an application, whether or not you need a visa, and the question that comes up so often by these sorts of events, housing. We're not going to talk too much about housing because there is another webinar on housing later on, but we will touch on the subject and try and answer some of the more burning questions you might have. The second important point we'll cover is money. And once you have a place, how can you go about paying to come here and study, and how much do you have to pay? And we'll also touch a little bit about our own experience with this subject, and also how much fun you can have here at Utrecht, what the life is like, what kind of options there are outside of your studies, and what it is like fitting in Dutch culture. So first of all, Valentina is going to talk to you a little bit about the application and the visa steps, and more importantly, and then we'll go a little bit into housing after that.
Yeah. Well, the first thing you should know is the deadlines are quite important for European students, June the 1st, and for non-Europeans, the 1st of April. Also, you know that for that you need to write a motivation letter. Well, I can share how I wrote my motivation letter. I think that for that you need to be quite honest. You really need to show how motivated you are on different levels, not only on the professional level, how this experience is going to contribute in your career, but also at a personal level, and also how, for example, that is going to be helpful for the society you are part of. I think the university wants students that are highly motivated, and if you are motivated on different levels, you should really show that on your motivation letter. And yeah, I think that that's quite an important, the most important actually thing in the documents you need to show for the university, the application process.
It could be something really small. Maybe it's one subject that you followed in your bachelor, and you thought, "Oh, this was amazing. I want to do. I want to study this for more time. I want to go further in depth into this." And that's something you could mention. Or whether it's what your goal is with your master, whether you know the job you aspire to, or the change that you want to make, or something like that. Just something so that the university can see this person has not only done a bachelor in a subject that's relevant, but also they have a little extra something, that spark, that drive to go and follow this course, complete the master, and not only do that, but really enjoy it. And that's more important, that you choose something that you're really interested in, and only then do you even begin to think about applying for it.
Yeah, exactly. Be certain and really make sure that you can show it that on your motivation letter.
Well, we've gone straight on to the housing questions. We have a couple of questions, one from Konstantina from Greece and one from Uluwatosin from the UK. Both sort of the same general area about housing, when to start looking and how to go about doing it. So hopefully we're going to answer a few of those questions in the next section.
Yeah.
The basic advice that's given to you or to every student from the university is to start looking as soon as possible. It is not easy to find houses here, and there are different ways to go about it, but be prepared to come across waiting lists and to have to try several times before you think you found a room. There are a number of options. The university itself does not provide housing for students. You can contact an organization known as the SSH, the Student Housing Corporation. Often they also have long waiting lists, but it is a good idea to sign up early, and you never know, you might have good luck with that. Otherwise, you have options like Kamernet, which is a Dutch app, which you do need to pay for, but it also does have listings of lots of different rooms available, and you can send messages to the landlords or to the current tenants if you're interested in the room that's on offer. But as we said earlier, there is an upcoming housing webinar on the 19th of April, so if you have a lot of more burning questions about the practical side of housing, then that is something that you should look into. But we're going to share a couple of our experiences and maybe tell a little story about how we got our houses.
Yeah, definitely.
So how did you get yours, Andy?
Well, when I started applying for housing, it was quite tricky because I was still in Bolivia and I was writing emails, I was contacting people with Facebook, and of course it was very, very frustrating because I was getting 0 responses. Fortunately, I have a friend that had already been living here in the Netherlands for 2 years or so while I was still in Bolivia, and she helped me to find accommodation. So it was basically through a friend that I found my accommodation, because I know how frustrating is the SSH and the Kamernet sometimes can be quite tricky to handle.
Despite the fact that I live much closer, I had a similar problem. For the summer before I arrived, I was in China actually for a while. So I was doing the same thing. I was hopping from Wi-Fi to Wi-Fi, from McDonald's to McDonald's, trying to send emails to people and send messages. And actually, none of that ended up working for me. So when I arrived here, I stayed in the hostel for 2 weeks. Which is something that there were almost exclusively in the hostel with me were other people, other students, also trying to find rooms. So it can be quite daunting. I sent, I don't know how many messages out over Facebook. There are a couple of big housing groups for specific cities, Utrecht being one of them, on Facebook, and they can be quite useful for finding places. And that's how I found mine.
Yeah, definitely. They can be quite useful, and you should be emailing people and using also Facebook, like at least 10 messages a day, I think it was recommended.
And then again, you have to be prepared for silence. You can send many messages and simply not get a response because it is such a high demand. And I've been on the other side recently. I had to find another housemate. One of my housemates is traveling for 6 months, so we had to fill his room. And I sent the message out on Facebook, and I got almost 100 responses. And we just didn't have time to read all of them. So you skim through and you pick the ones that seem most interesting. But it does make a difference what kind of message you send. So we're gonna, well, for me at least, what I tried to do was to put a little something, put a little bit of my personality in. So often you get very standard messages like, "Hi, my name's Tom. I like to going out with friends and drinking beer. I'm very social. I keep my room very clean, and all that kind of stuff." And the person who's looking for a new roommate reads that and thinks, "Okay, that's all very nice,
Yeah.
but he gets 90 other messages like that, and then there's nothing to separate you from the other person who's looking. So put something in about yourself. Put something in that makes you a little unique. Something that you may not think might be that interesting to you because you do it all the time. But let's say you're really into sailing, and you can talk about maybe a sailing holiday you went on a couple of weeks ago. Or I had a message from someone who pretty much told me a story in the day in the life of their cat. And you think that's not interesting when you're writing it, but actually for the person who's reading it, sets you apart. So anything like that, just something that makes you a little bit different from the hundreds of other students who are also trying desperately to find a room.
Yeah,
but
true.
It is doable, it is possible. Be prepared to wade through a little bit of disappointment, but you'll get there in the end. So yeah, our tips to you are pretty much be persistent. You do have to keep going, even when it does seem like it's going to be difficult to do.
Yeah, and also I would recommend if you find accommodation, like a temporary place to live just for a few months, and yeah, you get that. You shouldn't stop looking for a different place that is going to be your home for the rest of your time here in the Netherlands. So don't relax and just continue looking for places after you find your temporary place.
A good piece of advice at the bottom point is if you do have the chance to come a bit sooner, come on holiday, come for a week just to look. There are always these hospitalen, which I'll explain in a minute, open to find on Kamernet or Facebook. Just go, just see if you can get an invite, send people messages, and if you can go and show your face, it's much easier than sitting on the other side of a keyboard.
Yeah, exactly. In that you do in this event called Hospitier one, right?
Yeah.
Did you had one?
I did, and it was quite an interesting event. And I've had several since where I've been on the other side, which have been very different.
Yeah.
But when I came, I arrived, the door was just open, and there were about 30 or so other people there, all of us who wanted this one room. And it was almost a kind of house party. It was very laid back, very relaxed, but you really had no idea what you had to do to get the room, as it were. So I had already decided that I wasn't going to get it. So I sort of relaxed and thought, you know what, I'm just going to enjoy this as a party rather than a sort of interview kind of situation.
Yeah.
And I talked to almost everybody there. I don't think I knew by the end of the evening who lived there and who didn't. And at about 1 in the morning, I got a message from the person who invited me saying, "Hey, if you still want to be our new housemate, then you're welcome." And
yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, that's really nice. So it was a very odd experience for a first time for someone like me who'd been in the Netherlands for maybe 2 weeks. But it was on the other side. I found that if I relaxed, I really quite enjoyed it.
Yeah, it is an interesting event. I was in one, not while applying for a room. It was we had a roommate and she was living to a different city, so her room was going to be available. Some girls, just a few, not that many, not 30. We just had like 7 girls coming over to check the room. It was a nice evening. We had some wine and eventually picked the nicest of them all, but they were all nice. So, but still, I mean, they were all other 6 girls that were a little bit disappointed that we also liked. But it's something that you really need to show yourself in the Hospitier one, really. Yeah.
So again, you don't have to be overly nice or exactly. overly say yourself, because if you come across as somebody that you aren't actually that much like in real life, and maybe you might not find that you like the people you're living with.
Yeah.
And you might not fit into the house, and sometimes that's worse if you find a place that you really don't like, and then you have to go looking all over again.
Yeah, exactly.
But it is difficult, but stick with it, and you'll get there in the end. But enough about housing. We've talked about this way too much, I think. But again, if you do want more information, then check out the housing webinar on the 19th of April. We're going to talk to you now a little bit about paying for your studies here, because we all will have to pay eventually. We do have to pay some amount of money, and the difference in the amount of money depends on whether you're EU or not, if you can secure funding from other sources. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. in the next section. So this is a little overview about the sort of standard costs that you expect to pay, and this is for EU students, I think.
Well, this is general, I think.
General,
yeah. The first part, you can see how much European students are paying and non-European. There are quite different amounts, of course. And as far as expenses, basically, we would all be living with around 800 to 1,000 euros a month.
It can be done for less, and I've
yeah,
had months where I've been scraping the bottom of the account, where I've lived on 500 or 600. But that very much depends on your rent as well. And rent can be, I've seen places advertised for less than 200 euros, but they're very few and far between, and of course they're very popular. But more often the rent band is 300, 350 upwards to about 800, depending on what kind of room you're looking for.
Yeah, and another big expenditure is food, which would be around, I don't know, like 200 a month or something.
Again, it depends on.
It depends on where do you go for your groceries. Yeah.
So when I first moved here again, I was very unsure about how the supermarket things work. So I just went to the biggest supermarkets and did all my shopping there, because at home that would be the cheapest way to do it. But I actually found that there are lots and lots of small grocers and fresh fruit and vegetable shops that are very, very close to my house that actually sell things for a lot less.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's worth also just giving a little look to your surroundings and not always going for the big supermarkets, but seeing what's around you and how much you do actually have to pay for something.
Yeah, exactly. You can get better products for a better price as well. So.
But what's on the screen in front of you is roughly what you should be prepared to pay per month if you come to study here. We did get a couple of questions about grants and scholarships. We should say is that it is very, very difficult to get one within the Netherlands or from Utrecht University itself. I don't think there are that many available at all.
Well, there are some that are granted by the Dutch government. They are quite competitive, I think, at least for non-European students. They do have some, but still, I mean, I think that the best way is to look for a scholarship in your own home countries, maybe through some NGO or something like that. That would be more feasible, I would say.
Yeah. There are many very course-specific scholarships available throughout Europe and other countries as well. And I think for EU students, it's most likely that you get one from one of these websites. And on the bottom of your screen here, you see a website which has a list of many of these grants and scholarships that you can apply for. Again, I think most are very course specific, so the chances of you finding one general are very small. But have a look anyway, and you might find something that works for you.
And for non-European, you should also check. Look for more information on them. Like I was saying, there are some grants that are given by the university and the Dutch government, but quite competitive. So just look for more information on them. You can check the website of the university. There are a lot of information on the requirements and the amounts of the scholarship. So yeah, you should check.
Although if you are from the US or Canada, Utrecht University is certified for tuition fee loans from the US and Canada. So it's worth looking into if you're from one of those countries, that you might be able to get your tuition fees or your expenses covered from loans from your home country. You can also work here while during the study. And not many people choose to do this. Some do. I myself do. I have a part-time job, and it can be very, very handy to have a little bit of extra income just to keep you going, to pay for rent and other expenses. It also makes more things possible. You can, if you have a free day and you want to take a train somewhere further away or go on a trip somewhere, do something that may cost a little bit more money. It's useful to have just a little extra in the bank if you have the time and the will to take a part-time job while you're here. For me, obviously, not being Dutch, the language barrier wasn't a problem, and there are plenty of places that will take you whether you speak Dutch or not. Um, there are a lot of, I mean, I myself, I work in a bar, and there are a lot of other bars and cafes and restaurants with front of house staff, waiters, waitresses, bar people who don't speak Dutch, and that's not generally regarded as a problem, especially in a city like Utrecht, where a lot of the population is international. So if you don't speak Dutch but you do want a job, don't worry about the language. Of course, it's useful to learn, but it's not a problem if you do want to find a job that you don't speak Dutch. There are limits if you're non-EU.
Yeah, exactly. Depending on your type of visa, for example, me, I would only have permission to work 10 hours per week or so, yeah, or 3 months during summertime. And you would also have to get a different insurance than the one that you get while being a student. It is a bit tricky to get a job that it's only for 10 hours a week, but it's possible. I mean, I do have some friends that work under those conditions, and yeah, it's always quite convenient to have some extra cash around. So yeah, you can do it. Definitely, you can.
One thing is important is it's not just non-EU students who have to take out a Dutch health insurance. So
yeah,
if you're European and you take a job while you're studying here, you have to have a Dutch health insurance. You must take out your own one. You can't use your one from home, even if it covers you for every European country. So it's a useful thing to know if you do want to get a job here. And
Yeah.
then after you've finished, of course, finding a job once you've done in the Netherlands, if you do want to stay.
Yeah, you should check UU Career Services. It's this department of the university that organizes workshops and other kind of events to help students get some orientation on their career path. Where can they can apply for jobs and yeah, also develop some skills on them and give some orientation also on the visa procedures when you're not a European citizen. For example, we had 2 weeks ago, I think, a workshop on how to get the 1 year orientation year visa, which is only for non-Europeans, which basically is you can stay here in the Netherlands for 1 more year looking for a job, and that yeah, you're entitled to do it because you had a degree that was from a Dutch university. So you can also check that site over there and get more information on what to do after you're done with your studies here in the Netherlands.
Kind of moving on from just studying, well, you know, we came to this city to study, but of course we don't just study. We do other fun things. Not that our studies aren't really fun, but what is there to do in England? What do we do outside of our studies, and what possibilities are there for you if you come here, whether you're into sports or arts or anything in between? I myself, as you maybe saw in the photo at the beginning of the presentation, I do a fair amount of sport, and I'm a member of one of the rowing clubs here in Utrecht, one of the three. And if you're a student here, you can take a membership as Olympos, which is the big sports facility. And within the Olympos, they have many, many, many different sports clubs, which you can join whichever sports you're interested in. It's very, very affordable for students. And once you have a membership, you can take classes, join sports, do as much or little as you want for a flat fee, which is I think it's a very, very good deal, actually.
Yeah. But if you are not that into sports and you have like more of an artistic side in yourself, you can check the Parnassus. That's a place where you can have courses on dance, theater, painting, a lot of things.
Music as well,
yeah, music as well. I have a friend that takes piano lessons there, quite nice. As a student, you get a discount on that. And you can also go just for concerts and other performances, and it's a quite nice place. I don't do it myself because I'm not that artistic, but it is a really nice thing to do while you're here.
And a number of student associations, aside from sports or arts, for international students especially, the ESN is the largest. We also have the International Neighbor Group, or Bodyguard Dutch. The ESN is definitely the most active here in Utrecht, and they have a number of activities throughout the week, most notably Tuesday nights.
Yeah, at Puma.
Which can be, which we invite you to come and experience for yourself. But they also organize tours and trips and lots and lots of other fun events that you can go and join and meet other people who come from lots and lots of different backgrounds who are also coming to this one city to study.
Yeah, exactly. They also organize career events to meet people, networking, things like that. So it's quite convenient.
I think on Wednesdays there's also a language cafe that they organize. I think it's organized, yeah. But it's not just Dutch that you can go learn, and you can learn a number of other different languages if you like.
Yeah, or practice also different languages you may know, and probably if you want to speak your own language, for example. And
yeah, for example.
Yeah, if you miss it, then you can also do that.
Oh, no, that's a question for us here on the slide. What do we do next to our studies?
Oh, yeah.
What do you do next to your studies?
Well, I often go to the gym. I also volunteer. I do volunteer work with an organization that helps refugees. So yeah, that's quite nice. And I found that through Facebook, which you also should be constantly actively checking out for different kind of activities that you can do. Yeah, that basically takes most of my time: studies, gym, and the volunteer. Yeah, you?
Yeah, well, as I said, I do have a part-time job as well, which I do 3 days a week.
True.
But I spend a lot of time in the rowing club still, and I don't do it myself anymore. But I have a role there as a coach, and there are lots of new beginners who come in, and me and several other people are part of the group that tries to teach them how to do it. But I mean, apart from that, we're also here, so we're also involved in
this kind of activities. Yeah.
Trying to encourage you guys all to come and join us and experience it for yourselves.
Yeah.
And we've thrown in a couple of photos of
our life in the city.
And it's not all winter and freezing canals and snow.
Yeah.
It can be really quite nice here, weather here. And actually, in the beginning of the autumn, it was really very warm.
Yeah, it was super nice.
I went swimming in the canals myself.
Really?
Yeah.
How was that?
Surprisingly warm.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, wouldn't do it myself, but nice.
Especially not now.
Yeah, no. Right now, no. But Utrecht is a beautiful city. The canals are quite nice. Yeah, you will enjoy it very, very much. There's a lot to do during the day. There are beautiful parks that you can just walk around, or if you want to have a picnic on the park, it's quite nice as well. Depends, of course, on the weather. It rains a lot, but yeah, the city itself has a lot to offer. Yeah.
And it's relatively calm and quiet, which I find quite nice. But it does have some nightlife, and it's not just. Some people ask me the question quite often when I do go out, if I just go to Amsterdam or something like that. But there is a fair amount of nightlife here in the city itself.
Yeah.
And we've thrown in some of our pictures from our nights out.
Yeah.
For you to enjoy.
Yeah, there are a lot of cafes, there are a lot of bars, so Utrecht has a lot to offer for the day and for the night as well. Mm-hmm. It's quite nice. You will definitely enjoy your stay here.
And we've shown some of these photos already, I think. We're going to end today with a little introduction to Dutch culture for those of you who aren't familiar with it or maybe never even been to the Netherlands before. A little short snapshot of what Dutch culture is like, what to expect when you do get here.
Yeah, Dutch culture is quite particular. So
this is a couple of pictures of myself from King's Day. King's Day is the one day of the year where the Dutch go all out orange. And you can walk out into the middle of the street, and I don't think anybody or most people don't wear a color that's not orange. The one photo of me there with the hat is I didn't get the memo. I thought, a hat and a flag, that'll be enough. And I walked out and I was very, very obviously not Dutch. So for the second time round, you can see me there in the second photo. I made a much bigger effort, and that time I was much more inconspicuous. I blended in a lot more.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. I will have my
You
first
haven't been to one yet, no.
Not yet, but it is around the 17th of April this year,
Soon.
right?
It's
Yeah.
soon.
Yeah, so I'm very excited on it. I really, really do want to do it.
So
Be part of it. Yeah.
pack an orange t-shirt.
Yeah.
And of course, it's useful to learn a language. We should say that I'm sure many of you know this already, but a lot of people do speak very, very well. Most people do speak very, very good English.
Yeah.
And there are plenty of people who have lived in the Netherlands for many, many years and have never felt the need to learn Dutch and can get by with English perfectly well. But most Dutch people will, of course, appreciate the effort if you do try and learn at least a little bit of the language.
Yeah, just small things. Just for example, dankjewel, to say thank you in Dutch, because it is a hard language. I mean, it's not
It's not easy.
Yeah.
A lot of strange sounds you have to make with it if you're not used to it.
You can get a sore throat or something. But yeah, if you want to learn Dutch, it will of course be handy, but basically you don't need it that much.
Yeah. And they're not particularly well known for this.
Yeah, definitely.
But the Dutch do have a certain style. Style, is that the right word? I think style of food.
Yeah. It's not the best thing that the country has to offer, but it is nice.
Well, I don't know. I think sometimes a cassoulet is really what you need at that moment.
Oh, sometimes too. I mean, beautiful, and I love. I know that they have a little bit of meat, a little bit of cream. I don't know what is in it, but definitely tastes very nice.
Yeah. And some of the food already comes around a certain points of year. Like the oliebollen is something that apparently only happens around New Year's.
Yeah.
There was a stall near my house that popped up for like a week before New Year's Eve, and then the next week it was gone again. So I got one in that time because my housemates told me that I absolutely had to. But since then I haven't seen one anywhere.
Wait, do you like it?
It was okay.
Yeah, I really like my oliebollen. Yeah, but it's true. Since Christmas time, I guess I haven't eaten more. So, yeah, there we go.
Okay. We're almost going to wrap up. We've got a couple more slides to go through. Don't forget, though, if you do have any questions about what we've presented or any questions that you want to ask us about our experiences, just pop them in the chat and we'll get to them in a few slides' time. The final point that this is actually kind of an important point.
Yeah, super important.
Because I think you found this a little tricky when you came here.
Yeah, of course. Yes, for me, I've never used a bike as a means of transportation back at home. I mean, I have ridden a bike, but in the park or something. And when I got here, the very first thing I did was buying a bike, and now I really do enjoy it. But it was a little bit tricky, to learn how to use the bike lane. It was like a nice experience, but now I just love cycling everywhere. It's quite convenient, and it gives you some kind of freedom that you don't get it.
Yeah. I mean, of course, there are buses and trains and other kinds of transport, but especially Utrecht, and I think the main cycling street through Utrecht is one of the busiest cycling streets in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
And it can be quite daunting if you are not so confident on a bike. So we would say, well, first of all, when you come here, you really, really should get a bike because it makes your life much, much easier. But also, it's good to practice before you do come.
Yeah, definitely.
Because then it's not such a shock, and it can be quite chaotic.
Yeah, just like 50 people all in their bikes on a very, very tiny street, it can be overwhelming. But you'll manage. I mean, you'll improve.
You can always ask your first Dutch friend to give you lessons because they'll be more than happy to show you how to ride a bike.
Yeah, Dutch use the bikes for everything, and you will see Yeah, people with the baby there and shopping
see
bags and the
people-
wife there.
People with 3 or 4 people on one bike
Yeah.
and all their groceries, and it's amazing what they do with it.
Yeah, while on the phone, it is really crazy. Yeah.
I think we've come to the end of the questions. We've
Yeah.
got some questions that have come through in the course of the presentation. We're going to try and go through a few of them over the next 10 or 15 minutes. You can still ask questions, and maybe we'll get to them by the end of the first few. But we're going to start with a question from Sophia about motivation letters. Sophia says, do you have any tips on how to address the reader in the motivation statement? Well, it depends a lot on who you're writing to. Most of the time, it will be the course coordinator that receives your letter. So if you know their name, you can just write dear whatever their name is, or just dear sir or madam would be appropriate if you don't know who it is that you're writing to, I think.
Yeah, I remember in mine, I just started by saying, my name is Valentina, na 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 na. I didn't address it to anyone in particular because it was just a motivational statement. It wasn't actually like a motivational letter. So yeah, you can also start right away.
Again, this isn't something that you shouldn't take our word for. We can tell you what we did.
Yeah.
I don't think it's necessary to be too formal, at least I wasn't, but it does depend on the person you're writing to and your course coordinator. So if you're unsure, I would start with dear sir or madam. I think you're okay. Do you want to take the next one?
Okay. Well, the next one from Constanza. Do you have to change house often, or once you have, you'll stay there for the entire duration of the, yeah. Well, it depends. It really depends on what kind of contract you get. Yeah. For me, at least, my contract was indefinite. So yeah, I didn't have to move. But it really depends on what kind of contract you get.
There are a number of students who sublet. So maybe they'll go on an internship in a different city, or they'll go do a year or a half year abroad, or maybe even just take a break from their studies. And then what they'll do is they'll put an advert out for a temporary room. So quite often you see adverts for rooms for 3, 4, 5, 6 months, a year. And of course, as we mentioned, many people are looking for a room here, and many people will take that. Again, I myself was lucky enough to get a room, just a normal room for unlimited time. But there are some people who have had to, friends of mine, who have had to move a couple of times.
Yeah, as well.
Generally speaking, you won't find sublets for a lot less than 3 or 4 months. So often it's good if you can find a sublet like that early on, and then you have at least a place to live for the first 3 or 4 months. Then you can carry on looking for something a little more permanent.
Yeah. Well, let's go to the next question, also from Constanza. Do you recommend taking a Dutch class? Is there a course for international students in the university? Well, I would recommend to take a Dutch class if you, well, you can also use Duolingo, for example, but a Dutch class would come handy if you really want to learn Dutch. It is a tricky language, of course, and there are a lot of Dutch courses, not by the university, but a lot of other organizations. For example, ESN offers Dutch courses that are quite cheap, and many other institutes for learning Dutch. But as we said, it is not that necessary to learn Dutch just to manage yourself in the city.
ESN does give a basic Dutch course.
Yeah.
It costs around 10 euros.
10 euros, 10 lessons or something like
and it
that.
takes place within the university itself. And the university also does give you about 20% discount from Babel.
Yeah.
Although I would say all these things are very useful, but learn Dutch from Dutch people. Go talk to them in Dutch. I started off my my year with all my Dutch friends insisting that they spoke Dutch to me, and for the first few months, of course, you understand nothing. But after a while, you sort of slowly get a few words and you can reply and have some basic conversations. And I found, personally for myself, I found that easier than using an app or
Yeah.
something like that. But, you know, whatever works for you.
Yeah, it depends, of
But
course.
there are many different options available. And of course, there is an unlimited supply of Dutch people here. So if you ask one of them to teach you, I'm sure they'd be more than happy to. Another question from Ashley about how informal is the culture at the EU between professors and students? Fairly informal.
Yeah.
At least for all my professors, I've never had a problem with simply walking and knocking on the door. I never had to make appointments or send emails before I came in, and none of them ever had a problem with me just showing up.
Yeah, yeah, for us as well. I mean, we come from different faculties, and our professors also have this really, really small gap between them and us, the students. We address them saying, hey, hello, Jeroen, not like Professor Jeroen or something like that. It's there.
You're on first name terms with all of them.
Yeah, exactly. You don't see a large gap. Yeah.
No. I mean, I have the phone number of my thesis supervisor. I just send him apps with updates. There's no need for copy emails with dear Mr. whatever.
Yeah.
Following question from Maria. I would like to know if it's easy to find a part-time job in Utrecht and where I can find more information. It depends on what kind of job you want. Lots and lots of cafes and bars, as you mentioned, so it's generally fairly easy to find a job in hospitality, whether you want to work as a waiter or waitress or in the kitchen somewhere, or behind the bar. There are always places that are looking for people. The best way to go about it is simply to go and look. It's not a very big city center, and it's not a huge area that you have to look through. And most places will have a sign outside saying we're looking. And even if they don't, it's always worth just going in and asking. And as I said, language usually isn't a barrier. And a lot of the cafes and bars will have these adverts in English, so they make it clear that anyone is welcome to apply. But you do have to make sure that you let them know what your visa requirements are beforehand, and whether that might be a problem.
Yeah. Another question here from Carla. How do we travel to the university if we don't know how to ride a bike? An important one. Well, public transportation works really well here in the Netherlands. All public transportation, you use the OV chip card, which you can order online, or also you can get an OV chip card with different characteristics in the supermarket and just load some credit on it. Yeah, basically it works really well. You can find your way using it, but still, I think riding a bike is quite useful. It's basically very important to come here.
The buses are quite good, but I much prefer just getting on a bike and going than walking to the bus stop and having to wait for the next bus. And it probably doesn't take that much longer in the end either to wait for the bus. But it's nicer, and the city is built for bicycles, so that makes everything so much smoother.
Yeah, true. Just ride your bike, listen to a nice podcast. It's nice.
Yeah, and another question from Jose about on the same subject. If I cannot ride a bicycle, is it difficult to learn? How can I learn, and is there a course? I don't think there are courses that I know of, but as I said, I think any Dutch person will be, or anyone will be happy to give you lessons in how to ride a bike. It's not that difficult to learn, although I must admit, it's been I've ridden bicycles for a very long time, so I don't really remember.
Yeah, well, for me it was a bit tricky just to come here and start riding my bike after so many years where I didn't, and face a lot of expert cyclists. So, but you'll manage. I mean, it's not that hard, and within a few weeks you will be able to ride everywhere. Here, a question from Emma. is it cheap to go out for dinner? Well, of course, it also depends on the restaurant you choose. There are all kind of restaurants and all kind of foods. Yeah, I think how much would I spend? Usually if I go out for a small dinner and just a couple of drinks, I would spend around 15 euros. How about yourself?
I think most the sort of standard price for a meal out in a restaurant somewhere is around 15 euros. Sometimes it's a little less, and there's a little more. But you can always find cheaper places, and there are a number of cafes and bars that do student deals on certain days of the week. And then that changes quite often, and that's something you can look into when you do arrive here. But it's always possible to eat out for less than that.
Yeah.
Question from Amanda. Do you have any tips on befriending Dutch people? I think I can answer that question best by saying it's very difficult not to be befriended by Dutch people. Usually they're
quite nice.
They're very nice, and they're often interested in you because you're an international. And whether it's just because they want to practice their English, or they want to know about where you're from, or they're curious as to why you came to know them in the first place, it's often harder to stop them talking to you than it is to actually go out and try and make friends with someone. So I wouldn't worry about that at all. That won't be a problem for you or for anybody.
Another good question here from Ty. Could you describe a typical class course at the university? Yeah, well, the professor, as we mentioned, they're quite informal between professors and students. Some lectures are quite well. Some weeks are busier than others, and it really depends on I think the course that you are. But yeah,
I wouldn't say there is a typical class or
yeah,
course. It depends.
exactly.
It's all very different, and it's a very informal style, I think, of teaching. A lot of the content of the course is very much left up to the professors themselves. So how you get taught, how you're assessed, what kind of methods they use to give you your grades, very much depends from course to course. But you will be told about how it all works before the course begins, so you can make choices about which courses are best for you. We're going to wrap it up shortly. We have time for a few more questions, and if you do have a burning question, please ask it now. Otherwise, we'll be gone. Although there are always people contactable by email, or if you have any other questions specific to housing or finance, you can always look on the new website to find out who you can contact with these questions, or you can look on the UniBuddy part of the site, which is an app that we use, where you can get in contact with some of our other student ambassadors who might be able to help you further with questions. From Ramon then, a question: how did you deal with a different culture and traditions in the Netherlands? I don't know about you, but I threw myself straight in. I think you've seen a few photos of me there wearing lots of orange and waving the Dutch flag around. I quite enjoyed it, to be honest.
Yeah, well, I had actually some, quite a lot cultural shocks, of course. Being from Bolivia, it's a different society, very, very different from the Dutch society. But I think Dutch people are very open-minded and very welcoming. So I don't think you will have big problems getting into this culture. I think they are very, very nice and welcoming, so it will be a nice experience.
And often they're not only interested in you, but they're also very happy to explain all about all their traditions. So you'll be able to learn quite a lot about them quite quickly, I think.
Yeah.
From Rick, what was the biggest shock or change coming here? Would you say you experienced some kind of culture shock? I think we just answered that one.
Yeah, exactly.
Again, I think it depends on how far away you come from. I myself didn't come from all that far, so for me it was very much a very smooth transition.
Yeah. Is there something that you miss a lot back at home? Related to the culture?
No, I don't know. I don't think so.
Hmm.
There are a lot of similarities. So it's not like I don't feel very homesick very often because there isn't all that much. There's not huge differences. I mean, the weather's almost practically the same. There's rain here, there's rain home. Um, some things work a little better, some things don't. Um, but for me, it was all very small changes, and it didn't take a lot of getting used to. Although I think the bike thing was still the biggest thing. Obviously, I'm from London, and cycling in London is just a no-go. You can't do it because, well, I want to live. So it was quite a nice. It was very much a nice change, a nice shock for me to be able to come here and um, take my bike wherever I wanted to go, and actually to find that. Whereas maybe in other cities like London, if you're a cyclist, you're very much at the bottom of the pile. You know, if you're on the road, the cars go just go around you now, go ahead. And if you're on the pavement, the pedestrians are shouting at you, telling you to go onto the road. Whereas here, everyone gets out of your way. Bikes are very much, at the top of the food chain.
Yeah, definitely. Well, for me, it was the food, of course. Back at home, we really, really have a very nice and different kind of food, which I do miss a little bit. And yeah, the weather, I would say, maybe. Yeah, so it's time to.
We have one final question, I think.
Okay.
From Constanza. She says, regarding bikes, is parking a problem around the university, or is it easy to find a place to leave the bike? Easy. It's very, very easy. Obviously, it is very much encouraged to cycle, and everyone does. And most places know this. So not just university within the city, they have big, big parking garages just for bikes, and there is always space.
Yeah, actually, Utrecht has the biggest parking lot in the world, so you won't find.
For bikes.
Yeah, for bikes actually, and yeah, that's an interesting fact. And yeah, you will find your way to cycle in the city and put your bike somewhere. Yeah.
Well, that's it from us. Thank you very much for watching. You'll get the link to this video, which we have been recording tomorrow. We hope we've answered all your questions. If not, please do find us on the website, email us, send us any other messages any other way. Other than that, we wish you the best of luck. Thank you and goodbye.
Goodbye, everyone. Good luck.